The October 14th, 2025 Forest Grove School District Board of Directors meeting is called to order at 5:32 p.m. We'll start with the roll call of board members present. Kate Gradusky. Here. Maya Andrade. Here. Christy Kotke is here, and absent tonight are Alma Lozano, Brisa Franco, and Pete Truax. I'm going to have us rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I am not looking for approval of tonight's agenda because we do not have quorum at this meeting, and our plan for tonight is to at least get through board reports. We have a couple of important presentations that we want to make sure we do for the community. We also want to be here for public comment for the community and be consistent. We do have one person tonight here for that. And then we will close the meeting after the presentations, and we will follow up with a second meeting that will be posted that will just be with board members to work through our action items that need a quorum. So we'll start tonight with student rep report. It is homecoming. Maya has been working double time, triple time as student and student leader. And also we're talking about some possible changes to format and how we report. For tonight, we're just gonna turn it over to her and keep us updated on all the happenings.
Perfect. Good afternoon. Yes, look forward to that change. I'm all over the place today, so I do apologize. But here's what's going on student-wise. Our school is really a busy student staff. Everybody in general is preparing for our homecoming week. The parade is on Friday at 4 p.m. around town, followed by the game. This is the varsity football versus Canby at 7 p.m. And then our homecoming event is Saturday at 7. And in terms of sports, we have soccer for girls and boys. We've had a couple games this week and throughout the week as well. And today, girls soccer has a game at 7 p.m. at Liberty. Our volleyball team has been going strong this year, and the girls have a game today as well. Against Sherwood from 5 to 6:45. And then water polo, cheer, and football have been better across the calendars as well. But a big shout out for our cross country who had a successful week at the Shampoo Invitational Meets. Our senior one that almost finished in 5th place, that's a 5 place, so congrats to him. And then Iris Merkins also moved up on our boards with the 11th fastest girl in our school history, while we're right behind Mary Warren for the 12th fastest of all time. They have their next meeting on Thursday at the Brett Robinson at Nintendo at 4, and their fun run is also coming up, so running them out for our teams on October 25th. Other than that, students are working extra hard with grading this week, since it's grade week. Sitting in all the assignments, finishing projects, but look.
And Maya, I'm going to put you on the spot. For you personally, what's your favorite part of homecoming week?
I really like our rallies. I like doing our rallies. We do a combination of aesthetic heritage work and homecoming. And this year I came up with a pretty cool game for my LIA team. So I'm really excited to plan that. The parade is also really fun to see the community on the best points.
Yeah, I think the weather's gonna cooperate this year for the parade.
I hope so. It's like back and forth, no rain.
We'll see.
So we'll see. Cross our fingers.
All right, thank you so much. Kate, reports from the field for you.
Well, today I was at Cornelius Elementary School, putting shopping books and then reading to the pre-kinders and the kinders. And then we took a walk over to Cornelius Library and they read stories to the pre-kinders. And then we did the hokey pokey, which I haven't done in quite a while. So I'm always learning something new.
All right, and then I think, I know Director Truax is not here tonight, but he and I were able to attend the historical reenactment this morning at Tuolumne Plains. I know Dr. West is planning to talk a little bit more about that, and I know Director Truax spent some time inside with the kids, and so I expect we'll hear more about his perspective, but it was a really great experience, at least to be able to see what was going on there and the work that went on behind the scenes, as we know that teachers put together when they bring community members together to plan something like that. It's pretty inspiring. I do have a couple updates for OSBA. OSBA nominations for the legislative policy positions have closed. So ballots are actually going to be sent out to all board members on the 15th. It is posted on the site for the public, and you can see for our region who has applied. For our region, we have two applicants, Melissa Potter, who is currently on the LPC and serves on the Beaverton School Board. And we have a new applicant from Gaston, TJ Johnson. So their applications are posted and you can read questions and answers. How that works for our board is that all board members can read and do their own research, and then we together at the board meeting will decide who we want to support in that position. The other Washington County position is up, and Becky Timchuk is running unopposed for Region 16. So look for that information. My position on the OSBA board will also be up for appointment separate from those elections, and that application process will be starting in November. I've actually talked with Director Truax and asked him to consider that position, as it's going to be really important that we remain active, especially with our discussions about federal funding and local funding, and his experience with his connections across the state, and those conversations I think could be really valuable. But again, that's an appointment position to fill the remainder of my term. And the OSBA convention is coming up in Portland next month. It's a time when boards get the latest updates on funding and policy. This year in particular, those conversations will be essential, and they are ever evolving on changing day to day. Our board is going to, Director Truax is going to attend that on behalf of our board. In the past, we've had one or two board members be able to go. This summer, we sent new board members, Director Truax and Director Franco, to the summer conference. They were new to the board, and that summer conference gives them some background and also some training. And so watching our budget as well, which is very small for us to attend, we feel like he'll report back, and also we have ongoing conversations happening outside of that convention. It is in Portland. Portland has been in the news quite a bit this week, and I did want to highlight, just take a couple minutes and talk about that. I think in Forest Grove, my love affair with Portland started when I was teaching middle school and would take our classes down to Powell's Books for reading workshop, and the kids would be able to go to Powell's and have some time to roam and pick a book that was of interest to them, bring it back to the classroom. But it was the first time for a lot of kids, actually even in Hillsborough, going into the big city. And then we continue to take avid kids down to see Portland State and go to the art museum and walk on the waterfront and go hiking, and all kinds of experiences that you can have in the city that I think are really important. But my son and I are in Portland 4 or 5 times a week, and we were there this morning. We are right down on the waterfront to do walks. We go to the second floor of Powell's to look out at all the people walking by. We go to our new favorite ice cream shop called Kate's, which actually not named after this Kate, but just as delightful.
But I like ice cream.
I know, but I typically will make a point to go to the Ben and Jerry's in Pioneer Square, because that particular ice cream shop in Portland is, they employ kids who are in the foster care system as a way to move them into employment. And there's just so much going on down there that is so delightful in the fall. And I know that sometimes when I talk to people that don't spend time in Portland, they're sometimes a little bit reluctant to maybe even travel there. And I just remind people, like, usually when you hear people's impressions of Portland, they're two different things: people that are in Portland and people that have not experienced Portland. And it's just such an important part of our fabric in Oregon. That school system, I can't remember how many kids are in that entire school system, but just a reminder that all of these school systems around us are our neighbors and our kids, and are all working together. So I'm really happy to see the convention taking place in the city for that reason, but also because it's a great place to highlight some fantastic things that are happening for kids and families. Okay, the only other couple more highlights is I did want to share. I was able to go to the McKay football game and take my dad. And it was interesting because my dad went to a very small high school in Wisconsin, recognized some of the band songs and some of the cheers. And we talked about how some of high school has really changed, and in some ways it really hasn't, and how both of those things were really fun for him to see. The band, who also recently, I believe, won several awards at recent performances, is just really flourishing and just does a great job there. I mean, there's so much that you see at that football game, the dance teams, the parents who are participating. But the coolest thing was behind me was a recently graduated student who was there. He had played on the football team. He was there to support his friends and family members, but he was taking his CNA test the next morning. And his family was really excited about that, to see our former graduates not only attending games and still supporting our district, but then moving on to that next part of their lives were great. And finally, my last shout out is to the two PTO parents, Rachel and Ashley, at the Harvey Clark Book Fair, which I attended. That was a great opportunity to see families bringing their kids in. Again, you can remember probably going to school and having those scholastic book fairs, but being able to pick different books and having families talk about books together. But these two parents, they said, it's been a struggle to have parents that can help with the PTO, as time is very challenging for people now. But they had given this time to organize this night. They were taking care of teachers and families. They were very excited to be there. The energy was just inspirational. And so when we talk about people using their time in this community for good, I just really appreciate the involvement of our community members like that when you can, when time allows. So not a whole bunch, but that's nothing new from me. So I am going to move on to one other thing before we move to superintendent report. And if we can put up a slide, we wanted to highlight tonight and celebrate something that's been happening, well, at all of our schools, but in particular at Fernhill Elementary School. We want to congratulations on achieving the largest increase in literacy outcomes at Fernhill. And one of the things we asked them is we'd like to be able to show the community, bring into the boardroom spotlight of different things that are happening in our districts. And we tried that last year in different ways, and we were inviting people in and trying to highlight the work that people are doing in this format. And it's just really difficult to do, because while it's exciting for us to be able to know we can highlight it, teachers have had a long day, and sometimes when they come into a board meeting and they just take a picture and they were like, we appreciate it, but we were really trying to work on how can we make sure that we're honoring the work that's being done and also honoring the time and doing that in maybe a way that accomplishes both. So tonight we're going to try something a little bit different, and we just asked that staff to get together and be able to come up with what they would like to share about the strategies they've used. How they did it, a student first mindset and fidelity to M-class. A couple of these acronyms, I'm gonna pass it over to Dr. West in just a minute to give some detail. But maximizing instructional time, we talk about bell to bell, making sure that every moment that your kids are in our classrooms that they are learning, and that learning is intentional. Strong classroom management, peer observations focused on OTRs, ongoing learning, and some of that training, again, I'm going to ask for a little bit in more explanation about that. But those are trainings that allow our teachers to have consistent knowledge and actually ways that they then apply consistently what they're doing in the classrooms. Use of visuals and anchor charts, and just really building a culture of collaboration with the instructional coaches and the specialists. And that's something that I think everybody's understanding when we work together as a team, and we share across schools, not just Fernhill. That's not the only elementary school that's seen success. This is a school that we're highlighting tonight because of the particular success they've seen, and they had time to sort of put together an example of what that looks like. For family takeaways, one of the things we hear from families in the conversations we have been having is, what can we do to help with reading? And so one of the things we're going to try to start messaging more consistently is, what is that thing? Reading together daily, having books available at school and at home, and asking your kids questions. How did they feel? What would you do? Asking them questions about what they're reading. That alone will have an impact. Practicing sounds and syllables in everyday conversation. These two takeaways are things that Fernhill highlighted last year when they did their family literacy night. And that's coming up, I believe it's this week, and there's also one at Cornelius. At that night, families came and they did receive specific strategies from teachers that they were able to practice with their kids. And those are things that are shared out from families that can't make it on those evenings. That is information that we can still allow our families to access, and we can all kind of work together to improving our our scores. I do want to highlight a special thank you to all the Fernhill Elementary teachers and staff for their care and dedication and your kind of all-in approach on focusing on literacy. Kiana Tabor for really exceptional growth in math. Teachers Heidi Smith and Teresa Waters for outstanding growth in reading and math. And all the specialists that are really working to intentionally collaborate. It's all starting to make a difference that we're seeing not just in the scores, but in the culture. And the compliments to district specialists as well. I'm gonna toss it to them to just add a little extra details to that. That is one of our board focus goals was instruction and particularly around literacy. We're kind of just really making sure that we're leveling up in how we're sharing that information and also sharing with the community the specific work that we're doing around that. So people have a better idea of what's happening in the classroom. And with that, pass to Dr. West.
Yes, thank you. I'll address specifically some of the acronyms that you called out there and then ask our Assistant Superintendent Melanie to speak specifically to the ongoing professional learning and what that has looked like. First, starting with fidelity. If you worked in education for a while, you might have heard people say there are two F words. Maybe I shouldn't say that in a board meeting. But one of those is the word fidelity. The reason this matters in education is that there are decades of research now that make it really clear that the difference in student outcomes are greatest between teachers in the same school, not between schools. And one of the key reasons for that is that we don't have fidelity to instructional models and to curricula. There is a lot to teachers being able to exercise the art of teaching. There's also a real science teaching, and that is the fidelity aspect. So ensuring that our teachers first attend to the science, that we're using the curriculum that was created by curriculum developers, assessments created by psychometricians. That's foundational to any kind of instructional improvement. And once we have that down, then the art of teaching can come in and we can see some of the anchor charts there that are really well done. And that's an example of where teachers can exercise some of their creativity. Specific to MClass, MClass is an assessment tool that is connected with our elementary curriculum amplified. MClass allows us to do several things. One, it acts as a dyslexia screener, which is not only required by law, it's really important that we do that with kids as early as kindergarten. Two, it acts as a benchmark and universal screener for us so that we're able to, in a short amount of time, assess where are kids starting and then what is their growth. And we can break that down into very discrete treatment skills. We get a composite score as well, but we can also identify Suzanne needs some help understanding phonics. So we can get to that level with our students in terms of the assessment data that we get back. And now I'll ask, if you don't mind, to speak to the learning of our colleagues related to literacy.
Sure. The ongoing learning, letters, GLAD, CPS. Letters is our ongoing work we're doing around the science of reading. So really around literacy as well as language. We've had over the last 2 years, 60 to 70 people trained in letters or are currently being trained in letters. So we've had 2 cohorts in our own system, and this is a 2-year commitment, significant investment in time, resources, as well as dedication from our teachers around the science of reading. We actually have 2 individuals in our system, one TOSA and one teacher who are letters trainers who have been certified to do that. And it's really a significant deep dive into the science of reading, which aligns with our amplified curriculum and all of our efforts over the last 3+ years. So letters is that. GLAD is guided language acquisition design. It's best practice around how you sheltered instructional strategies, anchor charts, other things that really connect students to language acquisition, as well as concepts, designs, those types of things. And CPS refers to our collaborative problem solving, is how we're working with our students as we build a culture where they are feeling valued and ready to learn every day. So three ongoing investments that we made over the last few years. So it's not like the new bullet or the silver bullet or those types of things, but we know our research-based sound instructional strategies that we just need to continue to invest and go deeper.
And thank you for that. And
Yeah.
I'll add just one more piece and then turn it back to you. What is really important for a district like us is that you have all of that. As we have such a substantial number of students that are either learning in two languages simultaneously, they're emergent bilingual, or they are in our schools that do not have a dual language program and they're in full English immersion, but they speak another language at home. The addition of GLAD into the literacy development program ensures that we are following the scientific recommended strategies for how to teach students to read. And we are following evidence-based practices to make that instruction comprehensible for students for whom English is not their first language. So for us, all of these components in conjunction are critical to a successful literacy program. Does that address the questions that you have related to this? Big question?
I do have one question.
Yeah, I have one question. So when we have new teachers coming into our district and that, how are we helping them to acquire these skills that they don't have them?
Yeah, so that's where our TOSAs are just critical to our system because they either pull them aside, have one-on-one conversations, or trying to catch them up to speed on years of professional learning, whether it's deep into learning, so inviting them into those cohorts as well. This year, we have a waiting list for the first time in our letters cohort because people have found so much value. Word's starting to spread that even though it's a 2-year commitment, it's amazing learning. And so that's one piece of it. And the other piece is actually today we had a conversation with the provider about how to start interacting with playlists and other online or video trainings so that we can catch up our new teachers that haven't had quite the depth yet in order to get them some real quick, experiences in the science of reading. So it's a combination of things. But yeah, it's mostly the TOSA working and inviting them to other professional learning.
I was listening to NPR today and they were talking about, and I hadn't really thought about it. We think about the accountability in the classroom and that, but they were talking about the programs that are sold to our school districts. How do we evaluate the accountability of what they say their program is going to offer? And I had never thought about that before, so I'm just tossing that out because, I thought, well, I don't know, I really don't know.
Excuse me, are you talking about Common Core, for example?
No, I'm talking about the different programs that we have, like Letters, GLAD, and then other programs down the road that I know that we have a team that evaluates and we have input by our district in that, but if a program says I'm going to do this, this, and this, how do we know if the program is providing what they said they were providing?
And before I have Dr. West answer that, I'm just point of word that we have to have the conversation remain at the dais for the meeting. Just a reminder. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna break that down into a few different answers, starting with the Department of Education. The Department of Education solicits proposals for curriculum whenever we go through at the state level a new curriculum review. The state has a cycle of every 7 years refreshing curriculum based on content area. So prior to that refresh date, the state puts out a request for proposals. Publishers can submit their materials. The state goes through an evaluation process of comparing what the publisher submits to state standards. In addition to state standards, they evaluate, is this culturally relevant to our student population?
Are the materials available in multiple languages? Are there supports for English learners and for students who are differently able? So the state goes through a process of evaluating the curriculum before we even get our hands on it. Then it is turned over to the district, so the list of approved curriculum for the upcoming adoption cycle. Districts then go through their own adoption process because local context matters too. And we go through a similar process. We look at what the state has approved, and then we identify different, hopefully, one or two different curricular options that will work for our district. In rare occasions, there's only one approved curriculum that we might be able to look at. That has happened in the past, and that is an indication that our state is doing a good job, that they aren't just putting any kind of curriculum in front of us. One thing that is really encouraging that happened in the last legislative session actually is that the rules were changed so that the Department of Education request proposals is no longer tied to publishers paying. That was creating a real problem at the state level because only the big publishers could pay the fee to have their curriculum evaluated by the state. With that requirement removed, now smaller local publishers who maybe have curriculum that is just as high quality can also have their curricular resources evaluated alongside the big publishers. The benefit to that is that the curriculum will have more local contextual development that you'll see within it because those bigger publishers, they're really only publishing for a few states. They write for California, they write for New York, they write for Texas, the states that have the most children in it. And then they typically will make small revisions or supplemental additions for different states. So opening that door, removing the pay to play requirement may make accessible to us a broader range of curriculum that is as of high quality. So that's one part of the answer. The other part of the answer is that when we engage with a publisher, we engage through a contract process. So if we, through that contract, agree with the publisher that we need 100 professional learning hours, that contract is our assurance and our fallback to make sure that the publisher provides those professional learning hours to our district. If we say that for every year the contract is in place, we want access to the most updated software that's available, then the publisher is held to that. So that is a mechanism for us to make sure that our curriculum publishers follow through on the commitments that they've made for us. And then the last piece related to that is all of that happens at the district level. Going back to what Assistant Superintendent Lee said, where the rubber meets the road in terms of assurances and accountability is really what takes place in the classroom. And so all of those things don't matter unless our teachers are using the curriculum, that they're supported through the use of the curriculum, that they have ongoing professional learning related to the curriculum, and they get specific and actionable feedback throughout their instructional day as they use the curriculum. And that's where the professional learning designed by the teaching and learning team, the support of our teachers on special assignment, and then the observation process that our principals go through, and that feedback process is critical to moving practice in the classroom. That was a long answer. That's pretty good.
Can I just reinforce the feedback loops? Just last week, I visited the high school and went into science classrooms and asked, how's the new curriculum? With math teachers, how's the new curriculum? Getting that, being on the ground in classrooms, getting that feedback, listening to where what they're liking, what they're utilizing right away. What are the hangups? Often the technical technology. And then we bring that back and we take it to the publishers and say, these are the snafus. This is what's slowing down. Can we tweak this? And then, typically they're very accommodating. They are here to serve us and they're taking our dollars. And public dollars. And so they're striving to meet our needs in order to, hopefully we'll consider them again in the future. So we've got really good relationships with them and we're able to offer that feedback. And sometimes there's some tools that that aren't quite what we had hoped they would be. But fortunately, because we've had a very rigorous process, I feel like in the last 3 years, that we've landed on curriculum that folks have felt really good about. And so I'm thankful for our TOSAs, our teachers, everybody that have come to the table through those many evenings in order to select quality material that is research-based. Yeah, it's helping. It's helping.
Yeah, and I've been on the board for a while, so I have seen a couple reading adoptions. And,
Yeah.
I think Amplified really is meeting the needs of the children, but it's pretty comprehensive and takes time for our teachers to learn it. And I think we're beginning to see some really good results. But I thought the question on MPI was interesting. It was really, I forget what time it was that I was listening to, but it was very informative. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Questions?
Okay, I actually also had a question about the M class. I think last year was it the ELD team that came to request that we add the intervention, or maybe it was 2 years ago, to purchase the supplemental materials that allow for interventions. Am I remembering?
That's different tools. So there's M class and then M class lectura, which focuses on literacy, and then elevation was for our ELD students.
Yeah, so with those pieces and the M class, when a skill is identified in kids, can you talk about what it looks like in the classroom? I was able to see a little example of like maybe a small group or what that looks like when something's identified. Dr. West, you had mentioned like foaming for you. What would happen in the classroom?
Sure. So the assessments that we use, especially at the elementary level, do break down into the very discrete skills that students need to master as they progress in their reading development. And that starts with phonemes. But it also identifies struggles with phonics, fluency, and within fluency, it's both accuracy and rate that we evaluate because those are the two components of fluency. And then we evaluate all the way up to vocabulary and comprehension as well. So the assessment results are returned on multiple levels, school, class, but also at the student level. And for specific students, the teachers, usually in a team, will go through a process of identifying which of our students are reading at what we call benchmark, so the expected level for whatever grade they're in. Which of our students are not, and what are the needs of those students? What we typically find is that there are a number of students, sometimes 2 or 3, sometimes 6 or 7, that have common needs. And so those students are grouped in what we refer to as intervention groups. And they still receive the whole group instruction that all students receive, which is at grade level. And then they receive additional instruction on top of that addresses their particular skill gap. And that instructional cycle is monitored as well. So students in interventions have regular assessments more frequently than students who are not in an intervention, typically about 6 weeks. And that 6-ish week cycle allows time for the intervention to take effect, to stick, hopefully. And then we reevaluate. So for me, for example, if I were receiving intervention support in learning phonemes, if I am not making the progress that is expected, then the intervention may intensify. If I am making the progress that is expected, I may remain in the intervention a little bit longer until I reach the point that I should be at for my grade level, or I could be exited and just return to full class instructional. So it's very data-based in terms of what intervention is used with which students and for how long. Over the last couple of years, I wasn't here when this effort started, but I know over the last couple of years, we have increased the number of types of interventions that are available in our schools. And that's really important because not every intervention works with every skill gap. We need to match the right intervention to the right student need. And that required some additional resources for us to be able to do well. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Would you like to add anything to that?
Nailed it.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is, well, I need to thank Fern Hill because I think what has happened is kind of like a secret work session snuck in here around reading, which I love, and we talk about this as a board. It's important for the board to be able to have these conversations to get that next level of learning around what's happening in the classrooms. But I really think it's unusual for a community to be able to see some of that in-depth conversation that just happened here. And so, and thank you both for that explanation. I mean, we didn't, in fact, there might have been more questions, and our directors who aren't here tonight will have a chance to watch this conversation and then follow up with questions in their one-on-one. So I do think it's important for the community to hear like the level of professional development and interventions and teaching that is happening in classrooms, which when you're a student or you're a parent, you maybe don't always get a window into that complexity. And I think we're just doing a really good job of building in all of those layers and such a depth of understanding by the team. It's reassuring and really exciting about that we're starting to see some of those results where we know we need to see them. So thank you for that. All right, and thank you again to Fern Hill. I know their team met this morning because that's when they were scheduled to meet, and they were able to get this together and get some pictures for us to display. And we really appreciate the time. And I had some time on the phone with Rogelio, the principal there, who also, he was just making sure that, you know, what is it that we needed to see and wanted to show, and then he was sharing some ideas. So a real collaborative effort by everyone to get this here tonight. So thank you. So I'm gonna toss it over to Dr. West for superintendent report.
Great, thank you. I have a few things to share this evening. I want to start by acknowledging that there has been an increase in ice activity in Washington County in the last 24 hours. Some of this activity is happening on or near school campuses. I've said this several times in the boardroom, and I want to re-emphasize this here. Oregon is a sanctuary state, and as such, we are legally prohibited from supporting immigration enforcement efforts. That's what it means to be a sanctuary state. So as public employees, we cannot facilitate or assist immigration enforcement efforts. In addition to that, FERPA, which is the Family Education Records Protection Act, that protects student records. So an individual can't call the school and ask, where does Suzanne live? That information would not be released if requested. And then in addition to that, we have many security and safety processes, practices, and procedures in our schools. One of those is that our doors are locked all day long. So during the instructional day, those doors are secure and only people with authorized access can enter. So our schools remain safe places. I know the increase in immigration enforcement has caused some fears to escalate in our community, but our schools remain safe places. So I wanted to start with that. We were also asked to share what happens when a message is sent to the school board in writing or when public comment is submitted in writing. So I want to spend just a minute there. Starting with every message is read. So whether it's public comment sent in writing or whether it is a comment sent through the messaging system, those messages are read. Before the message is sent off to the school board, it is evaluated by district staff. And the reason for that is sometimes those messages need to be addressed, for example, by a school principal. We want you to have the message, but if there's a situation between students, the school board directors will not be resolving that situation. It will be the principals resolving that situation. So we scan those messages to assess who is the right person to work on whatever the problem is that it's identified in the message. And then that is communicated to the school board. We don't receive a lot of written messages. Since the last board meeting, I believe we had one message that came through, and it was an invitation from one of our high school colleagues, Laura Lewis, to the Veterans Assembly that's coming up. So again, we don't get a lot, but when we do, that is how we process those written public comments or those written emails. Any questions about that before I move on? Okay. All right, so I want to highlight two lessons. Lesson number one, I observed at NAMS. So speaking about new curriculum, we have a new curriculum, science curriculum that is being used at our middle school this year. Twig, did I get that right for Twig? So I entered into a single eighth grade class and the kids were busy with a tub full of water, something I'll call a paddle, I don't know what else to call it, a couple of flotation devices on top of the tub, and they were making the water move. I was super curious. It looked like they were just playing with bathtub water, but when I went to talk to the kids, I said, what are you doing here? What is this lesson? And I was blown away. The kids started talking about hydrodynamics and the forces that impact water and what they were learning. The depth of water changes the way the water flows in this situation or that situation. They were taking observational notes. They were way into this lesson that they were engaged with. And so I went from that classroom to every other eighth grade classroom that was currently involved in that lesson. There were 3 of them doing it simultaneously. And I was thrilled to see how engaged students were and what they were learning through that process. It was incredible learning taking place in those classrooms. So just an example of how new curriculum can be really transformative. First year they're using it, so there's always some kinks to work out. I talked to our science teachers at the middle school and they said, yeah, this is a little funky, but there's a lot that they like about it, and it certainly is supporting our student learning. So I wanted to share that. The second instructional observation is the one that Chair Kotke started with. Today I visited Tuolumne Plains and I was able to observe a reenactment straight out of the pages of the Vietnam War novel. We had students who spent time learning about the Vietnam War, but not just the war and the conditions around the war. They spent time learning what were the perspectives of a typical college student, what were the perspectives of clergy, what were the perspectives of a parent, of a soldier, what are the perspectives of a business manager. They really dug into how do perspectives inform public response to a given situation. And then they reenacted what happens when all of those perspectives meet each other. And this particular reenactment was in the form of a protest, similar to what you would see in either a movie or a documentary or even a book. It was very carefully orchestrated, very thoroughly researched, and very tasteful and carefully done. And I appreciate the effort. We had 2 teachers at Tuolumne Plains High School involved in this, Ms. Coleman and Mr. Bernard, and of course the support of Principal Brown. And they spent a lot of time preparing students for this. But I think one of the most, I'm going to talk about 2 things that I was really impressed with. One thing I was impressed with is that when I talked to students after the reenactment, we had an opportunity to spend time with some snacks and mingle a little bit in one of the classrooms. The students were able to clearly articulate, this is the role I was playing, this is the perspective that I adopted. I understand this perspective, and based on what I know, I either agree with it or actually I don't agree with it. Here's why. And to hear students be able to very clearly articulate what, I know you want to say something.
I see someone in the window.
Okay. Thank you. To hear students articulate so clearly their understanding that complex situation like war, people may have different perspectives about it. And there are ways to talk about these perspectives that are actually constructive. So I was super impressed with that. The other thing that I was really impressed with is that veterans were invited to this event. And the veterans that were there, some of them chose to participate, some just observed. But the veterans who were there were able to lend their personal experience to this event. and able to speak directly to students about the lasting impact of being involved in war. And as important, students were able to honor and thank our veterans for their service. And they did so with great respect. They did a really nice job with that. So to everyone and to all the planners who had a role in setting that up, they did a fantastic job. It was really incredible to see our young people engage in that. And that's it for me.
Okay, well, we have suddenly appeared from the ethos. Director Truax is on my right, and so I think for the record, we're gonna acknowledge that he's arrived at 6:16 p.m. Okay, that's important. Director Truax, welcome. As he can actually we just went through reports, but as Dr. West was just talking about the Tuolumne Plains experience, I know you were there as well. So I want to give you an opportunity to share if you'd like. Mic'd up.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, echo what Dr. West said, that I caught the tail end of. I was very impressed with the students and their energy. I was also impressed with some of the questions they asked me, as most of my tour in Vietnam was 99% boredom and 1% sheer terror, but that I was happy to share with the students and and the teachers that were there. They did a very good job of setting the kids up for the exercise. The book they read, The Things They Carried, is excellent tone regarding the Vietnam War, regarding war in general, and all of those things that we have to do to prepare for that and to take part in that kind of horror that war is. It's not a pleasant thing. It's not a pleasant thing for anybody, not for those who are participating or for those who are the ones at home waiting for that individual to come back. So it was a good experience on my part. Again, it's an ongoing catharsis. Those kinds of experiences, and that one gave me more of an opportunity to unload some of the stuff that you carry from, like he says, from the things you carry. So again, good opportunity and a good chance to reach across generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that Tim O'Brien's book?
Yeah.
Tim O'Brien, that is an excellent read. So thank you again to Tuolumne Plains. And I think we are gonna move forward. We're able to do some action items because we have quorum. We do not have FGEA. Okay, we do not have FGEA report tonight. Before we do unscheduled public appearance, we're gonna go back and I'm gonna ask for approval of tonight's agenda.
Okay, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, so now we're gonna move to unscheduled public appearance. The board appreciates community members sharing information during public comments. Public comments can be made in person or through Zoom by submitting the designated form on the webpage. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes, as is the protocol for board meetings. Board members will not comment or respond to questions directly. Public criticism or complaints about school district personnel are not allowed. We do have one very patient person that's been waiting for public comment tonight, and that is Mary Whitmore. Ms. Whitmore, I'd have you come up to the table there, and I'm gonna ask you to state your name and your address and your topic tonight.
Okay,
And we'll make sure that mic is working. I think it is.
I should know how to do this. Hello, hello. I know there's a switch. Hello, 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 hello. Can you hear it? I can. Okay. Hello. Okay. Wow. My name is Mary Whitmore, and I've been affiliated one way or another with this district for 35 years. I was an aide a few years before I got my teaching certificate, and I retired in 2009, and I miss the kids so much. And I'm always thinking about what I would like to do for the kids in this district. Plus, I'm bilingual, so that helps me relate to that community in a special way. Maria. This has been a really good year for me, and I'd like to hand these out to you. Or do I give them to you, or just a little note about my exhibit at Pacific University? I was lucky enough to be acknowledged and appreciated for 50 years of work on the Equal Rights Amendment. And so all my memorabilia is archived at Pacific University at Tran Library. And I hope that that can be used in March for Women's History Month somehow for high schoolers, probably would be the most appropriate age. But I just get so much, my heart is filled so much when I apply my vast experience. I'm 78 now. And to making life better for the kids. I have a little thing to offer the superintendent. And so I've given these to all the superintendents, to the last 4 superintendents. And I really like it because, of course, it's timely. And you can get a lot of vocabulary out of this with longitude, latitude, continent, western hemisphere, eastern hemisphere, northern, southern, etc. And it's just fun. So I wanted to give that, and it really saddens me to hear that out of our 500,000 students in Oregon, only 1/3 of them are reading at grade level. That it just hurts. But I'm looking forward to meeting with you at some time in the near future. And how close am I to my 3 minutes? Oh, okay. I will be contacting you. And I also want to encourage people to connect with Indivisible Forest Grove. We demonstrate at the Big Flag. I'm done.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
All right, I believe that is our only unscheduled public appearance for tonight. I do want to echo Dr. Westward's earlier. We really want to thank people who are taking the time to come and do public comment. And I think this week as well, I received a couple emails, and both from teachers. One was in appreciation for something. The second was a question about policy, and I was able to refer that teacher to the right person. And we just continue to be really available, make ourselves available to talk with people before and after the meetings. I'm happy to meet with people individually for coffee at any time. I welcome those emails. And so please continue to reach out if you have questions or conversations that you'd like to have. And I really appreciate this team being open to that as well. So, all right, we are going to do the consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine, non-controversial items to be voted on under one motion. Are there any items within the consent agenda a board member or the superintendent wishes to discuss separately? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. And we are going to move on to our 6:30 presentation with our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Director Arturo.
Great, thank you. This evening, we wanted to bring to the board the Division 22 standards. Typically, in the last couple of years since I've been here, our superintendents have included this in their presentation to the board. We decided to slow down a little bit, knowing that we have some new board members, to go a little deeper on what Division 22 is, and how we work to comply with these standards at the local level, and then ultimately, for the Oregon Department of Education. So what is the Division 22 standards? They're a set of rules that districts are to follow across the state. They are the floor. They are the minimum expectation that any district is is to meet legally in various requirements. Okay, and so we analyze that through our internal processes. We evaluate if we're meeting those specific standards. So what that looks like for us is we spread them out amongst our cabinet members based on areas that we oversee. We upload evidence to say we have met or not met these specific standards. And we do that over the course of October. Then ultimately we bring it to the board and share with the board, which we will tonight, areas where we are meeting or not meeting. And then from there, we work with the state to meet in all areas. So if we go to the next slide, it's broken out into 5 general areas. There's 57 of these rules, but they're broken out into high quality learning experiences, which is in blue. So things like the instructional materials that we talked about earlier, our adoption processes, diploma requirements, red, engaging partners and communities. So do we have compliant procedures around complaints or other ways in which we engage our community? Committed and supporting staff there in the bottom. Our evaluation tools up to date and aligned with state standards. Safe and inclusive schools. Do we have things like substance abuse prevention, other safety mechanisms in place? And then lastly, aligned and focused educational systems. Things like required instructional minutes, which we're going to talk with you a little bit more as we take action later on. There's a minimum number of minutes that we need to meet at the elementary, middle, high school, as again, that floor, that baseline level. And so we bring these updates to you every fall once we've evaluated where we're at as a district.
And one
Please.
piece there in terms of the evaluation, we are evaluating for previous year, not
Correct.
for current year. So this is reflecting back on the 24-25 school year.
So if a district is out of compliance for one of those specific of the 57 rules, we will submit a corrective action plan to ODE. For example, last year, if you recall, for some of you board members, we were did not meet or out of compliance for our PE minutes at the elementary level. So over the course of last year, we submitted a plan. State gave us feedback and said, here's some revisions that you need to make. We implemented that, resubmitted, they approved, and we implemented that plan. And so that's the process that you go through in order to make sure that you're working towards compliance. Those are the steps there in order to become compliant. And so for the 24-25 school year, so last school year, there are 2 areas in which we have rated ourselves as not compliant. The first is that physical education requirements, the PE requirements, specifically at the elementary. Although we submitted a plan, they approved the plan and we implemented the plan, we still feel like there's significant areas of improvement needed there. And so 4 of our 7 elementaries were still out of compliance because of our inability to use some of our instructional time in meeting the PE minutes. So for example, in order to count PE minutes into SEL time, for example, social emotional learning time, there has to be half of that time needs to be in physical activity. We just we weren't able to meet that. That was part of the plan. It was approved in the plan, but it wasn't the right solution. It wasn't what we felt really met the letter of the law, the expectations. And so we said, well, we're still out of compliance in that area. Fortunately, we are in compliance today. We did make the necessary changes in partnership with our union partners we developed some PE recesses, additional time where teachers are supervising recess and we're able to count that time. And so we feel really good about that. And so as of today, for this school year, we're compliant. But last year, being that this is 24-25, we were out of compliant. Another area that we were out of compliant for 24-25 that we wanted to share with the board is our emergency plans and safety programs. That is the fire drills, emergency drills, earthquake safety threats. That is still an area we are excited to have Josh Jeffries here, our safety coordinator in the district. And he has already made huge strides in this area that we're adequately documenting all of our drills. That we're on top of that. If you recall, last year we had some change in staffing that impacted that a little bit, and I'll let Dr. West elaborate a little bit more on this one. But we are all well on our way to being compliant in this area. But last year we didn't feel like we could honestly say that we were compliant the way we expect ourselves to be.
Yeah, I'll be a little more direct than that. In terms of number two, we did not do all of our required drills last year. So we needed to fix that. It is fixed now. It is being monitored regularly. This is something that slipped through the cracks. Our assistant superintendent Lily is correct that the transition between a couple different staff members was one of the reasons why. But we also just had systems slip at some of our schools. So that has been corrected and we don't anticipate any problems in the future, but missing one is not compliant. We missed more than that, but we could not mark ourselves with integrity as being compliant in this area. I also want to go back to number one briefly. PE is really important, but this is an example of where the state legislature leans in and starts to tell schools, this is how you're going to do it. And it makes it really tricky for us to balance demands like this against the very real resource issues within our schools. In this case, our association FGA was great about working with us to find a collaborative solution. And thank you to Assistant Superintendent Emily for leading those conversations. Another example is when the state legislature says, well, now you're going to be required to teach, for example, a career credit at the high school. And you cannot combine that with any other classes, including, for example, all of the career CTE pathways that you currently have in your school. All of these efforts are really well intended. There's good heart behind the conversations that lead to legislation that requires things like this. But the actual implementation in school districts is much more complex than the conversation that takes place at the legislative level, and sometimes really tricky to me.
And if I could follow up with that a little more direct too, of the 4 schools that were out of compliance last year in PE, 3 of them were dual language schools, where we're saying we value that Spanish language literacy time in addition to the English literacy time and or music. We're saying we believe in music. We don't want to scale back. And so something has to give. And in our case, it was instead of 3 PE classes a week, it's 2. Right? So we're in this place where we're having to make tough decisions because we value the Spanish language literacy and we value music. Those types of things really come into conflict in what we value for well-rounded student education at the elementary level.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering, hearing all of this and Assistant Superintendent Lumley's explanation, your explanation, Dr. West, the phrase unfunded mandates has a tendency to jump into my brain and sort of camp there. And I'm a little bit discouraged at not the efforts of the school board or the school district or the teachers and students. And I think our partners in Salem need to hear more about if they're going to make these kinds of legislative, and I don't want to call them demands, prerequisites or requisites for graduation or for advancement. Nice, that was tricky.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That was my train of thought. But I'm concerned about how are we going to do that in an arena of shrinking public resources. How do we do that? If public education is as important as we say it is, let's have the rubber meet the road. I would ask that we be in contact with OSBA and with COSA and with the FDA in sending strong suggestions to our representatives in Salem that we have to take that kind of direction, because you're right, public, physical education at the elementary level. There's a whole lot of energy running around with those children. And they need to get rid of it somewhere, and they aren't gonna get rid of it reading. They aren't gonna get rid of it computing. They have to have some physical activity and structured physical activity so they are able to leave that recess period, if you want to call it that, or physical education period, and be coming back into the classroom, the other classroom, ready to learn.
Agreed.
And then again, like I said, unfunded mandate is, I think, one of the ugliest phrases we have, and not only in public education, but in public financing in this state, indeed in this country. Thank you for allowing me to ramble.
I think we covered this one.
We need.
Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll pitch it back to you, Chair Buffy.
End of meeting.
Oh, maybe we're not there yet. Are we there?
That's wishful thinking. That's wishful thinking, but unfortunately, or fortunately, we have a few more things to do. So thank you for that presentation. Thank you for the comments, Director Trax. I completely agree. My question was, is it COSA? Where are the conversations coming back? I know those are conversations we do have at the board level, but is there a general conversation with COSA and does it go to ODE and ODE pushes on the legislature on this? Are they not listening or hearing some of the points that Director Truax just made? I mean,
COSA is a good advocate, as is OSBA. They engage in a lot of advocacy at the state level. The Department of Education has recently made it very clear that when it comes to any legislation, they are neutral. They do not weigh in one way or the other. So we really have to rely on COSA and OSBA and other advocacy groups to help get our message out there. And then, of course, we can liaise directly with elected representatives as well.
I might have to be on the record to say that is a conversation about ODE. I just think cannot remain neutral, but that's conversation that I would have as a board member with whoever are the appropriate people. I think neutral does not indicate a vision, and that's one of the bigger conversations we've asked the state is what is the vision? And if ODE cannot herald that, bring that vision forward, then who are the people? So yeah, it feels like we're definitely circling around the same themes and struggling to get the advocacy points across that you mentioned, Rick. Yes, Kate, did you ask?
Well, my comment is that as we're watching the dismantle of federal dollars in education, and also then it trickles back to Oregon, and programs are being cut. You know, who is going to push to say, let's review these 100+ unfunded mandates and the thing that bothers me the most is that the legislators fund these mandates But then there's no review if they are effective or are they outdated? And to me, I mean, we could get more time in the classroom for other things and staff being utilized in a better way, but somebody has to step up and say, we need to evaluate these unfunded mandates. And are they doing what we wanted them to do? Are they outdated? And let's deal with it. And I know that Dr. West and I know you have also spoke time and time again, but they just, who do we set the fire under to really address this?
That is the question.
Right.
That's why Director Truax will be attending the OSBA conference,
Gonna be our hero.
in a few weeks and make those conversations, ongoing conversations continue. As we have been, we also do have our senator and reps coming in November to walk through schools in Orange Grove and Hillsborough, and some of those conversations locally are
Do we have a date?
the 12th, I believe.
The 12th of November? Yeah, okay.
All right, action items, Division 22 instructional hour waivers. We are gonna ask for 2 motions for this action item.
Yes, so this is for this year, so the report that we just gave was for 24-25. The Oregon Department of Education allows with board approval for districts to submit waivers in order to, one, we're requesting a waiver in order to allow us to use 30 hours of recess for kinder, 60 hours of recess for grades 1 through 3, 30 hours for staff professional development, and 30 hours of parent-teacher conferences. These are hours that the Oregon Department of Education allows us to include as our, to help meet our minutes requirements. And so, but we only are able to do that if the board approves our ability to do so. So we bring this to you every year. And it is included in our minute calculations in order to meet Division 22 and allows us to also have a little bit of a buffer for inclement weather, those kind of things. And so that's the first request that we have for you tonight. The second is Oregon Department of Education also allows us to exempt Tuolumne Plains High School because it's an alternative school to meeting the same meeting requirements as Forest Grove High School with board approval. So we're also bringing that to you tonight because it's an alternative school. It allows a little more flexibility for those students and for that staff to meet various needs. And so those are the 2 areas that we're seeking your approval for, 25 and 26, so that we can be in compliance for Division 22.
I'm gonna ask first for questions for Assistant Superintendent Emily, and then our executive assistant has reminded us gently that we need to read the motions as in full on the paper, but questions about either one of those motions.
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm a little concerned over instructional time, including parent-teacher conferences. I want to ensure that teachers know that this is an important part of education, an important part of teaching the student, the entire student. And we can reach them fairly effectively. I'm a little concerned about parents that might look at that and say, oh, this is just a way of getting some seat hours almost. Making the connection of trying, how do we make the connection? I'll put this in the form of a question. How do we make the connection of a parent having a worthwhile conference with the teacher over the education of their child, his or her child, as part of the education for that particular child? You get my drift. That link is important to me because I don't want parent-teacher conferences to turn into drive sessions or hand-holding sessions or those kinds of things. I want them to be part and parcel of the instructional process if we're going to adopt this motion. Any of that make any sense?
No, absolutely. I hear where you're coming from and I wholeheartedly agree. I think we see much more participation at the younger ages, and as we get older, it tends to, lighten up, or they don't feel the same degree of connection with the teachers or those types of things. And it's a constant challenge, I know, for principals to make sure that those are meaningful. But I absolutely hear where you're coming from on that, especially considering we're saying it's part of our meeting minutes requirements.
It is something that we can always do better at.
Yeah.
And I know from being in schools on conference days, that teachers are sitting down with parents and going over some of the assessment data that we just talked about. And helping parents understand this is where your student is at, or this is where they began at the beginning of the school year, and here's where they're at now. Talking to parents about how they can support at home. Those conversations are happening, not with every parent. Unfortunately, not at every conference does every parent show up. As Assistant Superintendent Emily said, as someone who has worked at the high school level, it is really hard to get parents to high school conferences. But we continue to try to improve in that area because it is important. I wholeheartedly believe that the first and most important teacher for every child is their parent. And the education of that student is the partnership. So it is something that I know in my conversations with principals and teachers that they pay attention to, and they're continuing to improve, but we have work to do there.
And I appreciate it's not the answer, but it has, I've been told, really helped deepen the conversations for the parents who have come is some of our new assessment tools with lesson, as Superintendent West brought up. They provide us these amazing data sheets, one-pagers, and to help us build that partnership with parents. They break down where they're at with their fall benchmark assessments. They give ways that parents can help fill any skills gaps that may exist. And it gives teachers a little bit more of a script to follow, and helping them to build that partnership with parents. We're only 2 years in to using those tools. But it's still the power of that conversation one-on-one, that is the most powerful piece.
So, excuse me. So I will move to approve the recommendation of 30 hours recess to kinder, 60 hours of recess for grades 1 to 3, 30 hours of staff professional development, and 30 hours of parent-teacher conferences to be included as instructional time for the 2025-26 school year.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? We'll do it all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. We're on to motion 2.
I will make the motion to approve the exemption of Tuolumne Plains High School, an alternative program for meeting the traditional high school hours requirements for grades 9 through 12, as defined in ORS 336.615.
And I will second.
Discussion.
Well, I kind of was just wondering, since we're there, I'm essentially the Tuolumne Plains High School, and it's a high school that, from what I've heard, is aiming to, continue having students, push for like education, even if it is in alternative ways. Since they wouldn't be part of that Division 22, like the instructional hours, what are the requirements there? Like, how are we meeting those standards for them as well?
Love that question. Do you want to take it?
Sure, we can both tackle it. No, it's a great question because we don't want to lower the expectations, right? Still want to ensure that students are attending, that they have a rich experience, that they're meeting the proficiency standards are the same, right? The proficiency standards that still need to be met are consistent with any high school state standards. To get there in different ways, we have that creative ability within the alternative program, project-based learning that was discussed earlier. But it does adjust some of the seat time requirements. Yeah, would you add anything else?
Yeah, the other thing I'll add to that here is that Tuolumne Plains High School provides a really good education for students for whom a traditional high school doesn't work. And sometimes that means that we have to be a little more flexible with student needs so that they can, for example, take care of their little brother in the morning and get them to school on time, which means they're late to school based on the high school bell schedule, but we can accommodate that. So Tuolumne Plains High School works hard on an individual basis with kids to, yes, have a standardized schedule, but also to meet the unique needs of each student. And they run multiple programs. So they have, for example, a discovery program when students first arrive at the high school, which is very concentrated and not at all the traditional high school experience. It's about learning how to be a student and recommitting to the education process. They have an online school that functions very differently than a traditional high school. So with all of those very different components in one high school program, that flexibility is really important to meet the needs of the programs and the needs of the students.
Could you add a little bit about what seat time means? When you say seat time, when we say seat time in education, what are we talking about?
Yeah. Seat time, at the high school level means is the amount of minutes that you're required to attend in order to receive credit for a specific class, credit bearing classes. You have to be able to be there to earn that credit.
Yeah, it's, I don't want to use the word old, it is, the traditional system for how students earn credits in school. If you have heard the expression Carnegie units, seat time is synonymous with Carnegie units. It's really how our school system was originally established. And it made a lot of sense at the time that it was established that you would equate time learning to a level of expected proficiency. What we have learned since then is that students learn at lots of different rates. In fact, one of the students I was talking to at Tuolumne Plains High School today is going to graduate early because he was able to accelerate through some of his coursework faster than what traditional Carnegie units would have allowed for. So we are still tied to, at a state level, those Carnegie units, seat time. We use that expression. Unfortunately, we haven't moved to a system that allows us to assess what students truly know and can do and the rate at which they are learning those skills. We're not there yet as a state. We're still tied to this other accountability system. Follow us, man?
No, that makes sense. Thank you.
Now you know why you said school.
That's an important question. Thank you for that. We are going to call for an all call vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and motion passes. And we are on to out-of-state trip request, the Forest Grove High School DECA, and I'm going to pass that to Superintendent Dr. West.
Thank you. Yes, our DECA program is one of the classes and clubs at the high school. And they take an annual trip to the national conference, which is held every year in Orlando, Florida. At this particular conference for this year, the focus is marketing. So students who attend will be immersed in, just like any conference, you can select your sections and you can learn from experts in the area of marketing. So this comes before the board because it is out of state travel for your approval. Questions?
I have a comment. When I was, in my previous life, I was a newspaper reporter for the News Times, and one of the individuals at the high school, I believe his name was Ray Haas, was deep into DECA. He was the DECA god at Forest Grove High School. And the publisher of the News Times was very very supportive of the program. So by extension, I got to know a lot about DECA and the opportunity for the kids. In 1969, that was a non-traditional program. And there were kids that were learning there that would not, I won't say could not, they chose perhaps to learn in different ways, and the traditional classroom didn't quite work for them. And granted, we've come a long way since then, but DECA was one of those alternative programs that allowed kids to learn outside the classroom. And it was impressive to see the number of students that were empowered by it, number of students that grew from it when the traditional classroom may not have worked for them. And I just want to indicate that if we make a motion and if we vote on it, I will be voting in favor, because this is a good thing. It's a good program for good people. So, speaking of which, I will move to approve Forest Grove High School DECA Group's request to attend the Sports and Entertainment Marketing Conference in Orlando, Florida, from January 27th to February 1st, 2026.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, and we're on to superintendent evaluation and timeline with Dr. West.
Yes, thank you. At the last board meeting, we placed into the board packet documents related to my evaluation for this school year and a proposed timeline for that evaluation. Last time it was a first read, it's coming before you again for some action, hopefully tonight, or to answer any of your questions. Questions?
Well, I think it's very ambitious, and I have seen Dr. West in the schools, and I really appreciate your focus on instruction. I think that, and the alignment of instruction throughout our district, which I think is going to really show this year, but I especially think next year, the growth in reading habits, especially. So thank you. Thank you.
You need a motion.
I like motion.
Oh, okay. I'll make a motion to approve the 2025-2026 superintendent evaluation and timeline as presented.
And I will second.
And for discussion, I will just say, for anyone who may be watching the meeting, this is a process that has really been something new that we have pretty much broken down the evaluation process together last year with the district team. I've talked about this in these meetings before, but we rebuilt what we all want a process to look like, the timeline, the expectations, and most importantly, the transparency for the community. So if you are watching and people are asking questions about how does this whole thing work and how do people hire superintendents, this is a great opportunity to go into that packet and read the timeline of how we do go through this process together, but also the things that we're going to be looking at as a board and with our superintendent and with you, the community who may be watching. Maybe there's someone watching. If there's someone watching right now and you email me at my board, I will deliver a copy to you in the City of Forest Grove address tomorrow. I'm just testing, because we do think there might be people.
Remember, the Forest Grove School District goes beyond the borders.
Henry and I drive all over, Henry and I.
Why don't you somebody from Cornelius?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Cornelius is Forest Grove. So this is a really important item for that reason. So I'll refer people back to this packet to be able to look at that. I'm very proud of how transparent we are with that and how we're open to looking at different ways of doing things together. And a lot of that work was done by Dr. West, bringing us ideas that she had, and also our staff looking around at what different districts are doing for evaluation process. And in many ways, we are actually leading this work, and we are getting requests from other districts looking at how we're doing things, because the way that it's being done in districts across the state has not proved maybe to be as successful as boards want it to be. So work in progress. We're always looking for ways to improve and adjust, and you'll hear us talk about what's going well, but we're doing that all together. So with that discussion piece, I will ask for an all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and I think that motion passes, and it is gonna be adjourning at 7:01. We are adjourned. I think, I mean, there's some for sure. Okay, wait. 7:01 and 20 seconds. Adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. 10% the first one.